Hi, I'm Dr. Emma Cunliffe. I'm a research associate in the School of Arts and Cultures at Newcastle University, and I work in what's called the UNESCO Chair in Cultural Property Protection and Peace. And most of my role involves supporting an NGO called the Blue Shield, which is an NGO that protects cultural heritage in armed conflict. So the research that we do in the university goes directly to supporting that NGO, and our work goes on to inform policy and hopefully have an impact in the world to help people whose cultural heritage is being destroyed in wars around the world. My main research methods in this area are twofold. One is what we call the use of GIS, which is a geospatial information system that you can use to plot and to record where things are, but in a computer space. So the computer will be able to understand the coordinates of the sites and map them against each other, and then we'll use that data against satellite imagery, and that can either be purchased satellite imagery that can be very high resolution. You can see things commercially available down to about 0.3 meters, or more freely available using easily available platforms like Google Earth, which usually have satellite imagery up to about 0.5 meter resolution. And we'll use those to map and track damage to cultural sites across the world, depending on the amount of money, time and resources that we have. And then we support that with a basis of research in international law to understand who is doing what and why, and what the problems are in implementing international law effectively. So, for example, seeking to understand why this site was damaged in a conflict. Was it a legal action? Did the people who did the damage understand that it was cultural heritage? Were they even aware of it? Had the civil authorities mapped the cultural heritage and told people that it was there and it was protected? Was it a mistake? Was it deliberate? And we try and answer those questions. I don't know that satellite imagery analysis has any particular research philosophies underpinning it, but I think something that I found very influential has actually always been the human rights agenda. And there's not a lot of work on it, but there is some really interesting things about consent and how we need to be very aware that when we're viewing this imagery, we're talking about people's lives, like real people on the ground whose lives have been very affected by what's happened. And so there's some really interesting work about how we have to be very careful as researchers in the West viewing people in these really difficult situations who can't consent to us viewing them. And in fact, neither can the states in question. The state can't necessarily give their consent to us viewing them. And so we have to be very aware of the ethics of what we're doing. So we try and follow a lot of the humanitarian principles of work in what we do, and look at the principles of impartiality and neutrality and consent in our actions. I think the most exciting research methods that I can use are some of the new satellite images that are coming out, where the resolution is so specific and so detailed that you can just see things in amazing clarity on the ground that, 10 years ago when I started in this field, that just wasn't available at all. Now you can see, the individual walls, you can see individual stones in houses that have been destroyed. You can see perhaps where things have been moved around, you see the bulldozing, and just that level of detail is absolutely fantastic. And with the new satellites that are coming out, the resolution's getting better, they're becoming more easily available, and we're also starting to open up the possibilities of automated mapping of damage, when previously a computer really couldn't tell the difference between whether something was a trench put down by a bulldozer and a farmer, or whether it was something being done for military purposes, and it didn't have the capabilities of telling the difference between, or even just a road that had been built. Whereas now the new technologies that are coming out have the potential to automatically classify it. And when you think that there are hundreds of thousands of heritage sites, that's going to be huge. There is no particular research person who inspires me methodologically, but I think that there is one person who had a huge influence, and that was my PhD supervisor, Professor Tony Wilkinson. And he always really believed in using the research that we were doing to help the people in Syria and Iraq where we were working. And he passed that on to me. And he's left an amazing legacy of his work across the whole region. He was just the most amazing man, and his passion and his commitment to partnership with the people there, I think, really inspired me. And it's led me to really strongly believe that the work we're doing now has to be of benefit to people, and has to be a benefit to the people in those areas to help support them and make their lives better. I would actually say if there was one thing I could have told my younger self, I would have said, learn your languages. I don't care if you don't like them, learn your languages. The biggest hindrance in my work has hands down been that I have failed every language I've tried to study. Either because I didn't like them or they were very difficult, and I came up with many excuses, but I really wish with all my heart that I had stuck with my French and my German, and I had tried again at Arabic, because now I work with partners in pretty much all around the world. You know, we have African colleagues, so, you know, French, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Arabic, you know, across the Middle East. And only speaking English is a massive hindrance. And I have colleagues, I have a good friend who's on his 8th language, and it really shows me up just what you can do if you try. And he can just talk to everybody. And I think it's amazing. The 2 texts that I would tell students to read about methodology, one is an article by Salam Al-Kuntar, who was born in Palmyra in Syria, written with Brian Daniels in America. And they look at how the Western community has responded to the damage in Syria. And I think I found it really thought-provoking, because it really encouraged me to think about why I was mapping damage and who I was mapping it for. And they argue very strongly that actually a lot of the reasons we map damage are so that we can just feel better about knowing what's going on, like we've done something. And I found that really, really meaningful to me, because I know that I have done that in the past. And I thought that really made me feel like I needed to make sure that I was doing this for the right reasons. And the other one that I would ask students to read is by Andrew Herscher, who is an architect, which is why he doesn't tend to come up in archaeological site damage work. And he talks about the language of damage, and that's the title of the article. And he writes about how architecture becomes a witness to these types of damage, but that again, it's not mute. It doesn't just tell a story by looking at it, and you have to go beyond it to the people behind it.